Cloud. Hi, everyone. Today is Jan 6th, and this is the bi-weekly meeting of SIG Architecture Code Organization. So let's get started. I don't have any specific agenda as such, and looks like Sergey has added one. So let's get started with that.
Okay. Yeah, I don't know whether it deserves to be discussed in the meeting, but since it's on agenda item, I'll go ahead. Welcome, and I will try to start attending this meeting. I want to be more involved to this. So on holidays, I was looking into different files, like comparing them, especially ones that's supposed to be the same. And I have a question about this, like two files about types Go files. They almost the same, but not exactly the same. Can we do something about it? Especially like I started comparing fields. It's not that easy because even like ordering of types declared is different. And I found a couple of missing fields. And one types Go have this field, and other types Go doesn't have this field. This doesn't sound right, and maybe we can do something about it. And like maybe one of them can be removed. I just don't know all the history. And second topic is for CRI specifically. I looked at CRI comparison, and I wonder, like, if in this release we will remove CRI v1 alpha 2, it will be okay. If we wouldn't remove, we need to keep these files as closely matched as possible. So I wonder if there is any precedence, like building tool to compare files and keeping them in sync.
So let's start with the first one. Jordan, do you remember about these two files?
I mean, the internal API type and the external API type are intentionally able to diverge, though in practice, we keep them mostly in sync. The reason they have to be able to diverge is so that if there are multiple external versions that have differences, the internal one can sort of be the union of the two. Also, the documentation, the Go doc on the internal type doesn't matter nearly as much as the external one. The external ones are the ones that are generated into OpenAPI and are used by end users. So ideally, if we made a typo fix in one, we would fix it in the other. In practice, it doesn't really matter that much. The important thing that they have to be convertible to each other, that's verified by CI scripts. Like there's a test to make sure they're convertible and verify conversions and round tripping. So that is tested, but the documentation and stuff like that is sort of best effort.
How big is the differences that you've seen, Sergey? Is it just the comments, or is it
comments for sure, but few fields? I can try to compare them. It's a little bit tedious process, but yeah, I can file an issue and send differences.
I'd be interested in the fields, especially. Sometimes that's intentional, like I said, because the internal one was bridging between two different external versions that had differences. And there are verification scripts so that when there are differences in the fields, they get flagged during review. So I suspect that the ones that are there are intentional, but if you see something that doesn't look right, definitely bring it up and we'll check it.
Right. I guess we do this once now, and if we end up doing this again at that point, instead of doing a manual thing, we'll have to write some code to compare, parse out the Go files and do a comparison that way. So does it sound okay, Sergey?
Yeah, absolutely. I was just not aware of this difference and why this difference exists, but this explanation totally makes sense.
Yeah, it makes more sense if you're looking at a package that has multiple external versions, like apps has one internal version and then like 3 external versions. And so that makes it easier to see why there are different files and why there's the ability to have them be different. When you only have one internal and one external, it seems pretty silly.
Okay, so the next one is the CRI v1 and v1 alpha 2 API. I did see this briefly, but I didn't go through it in detail.
Yeah, in this PR, I just synced up comments, and it turned out that people sending PRs, and in PRs, we've been adding fields in both files, and comments were different in one another. So I was wondering if you want to keep them up like exactly the same.
Yeah, I think for now, at least, through whatever we are doing in the big node stuff, I think they should be in sync. There should be no differences between the two. But I think over a period of time, V1 will be making changes in the V1 API at that point. So let's sync once, and then after that, we can leave it to the winds.
Weren't we expecting to drop V1 Alpha 2 support after the current, maybe the next release or two? I thought 123 supported both, but we were expecting to converge on V1 once things like Containerd and Cryo picked up the V1 API.
Yes, that's still the plan. I don't think that has.
Okay. Yeah. I also linked to the issue that you opened, Sergey, asking for some clarity and policies around the CRI versioning. I assigned that to Tim since he has more familiarity with the gRPC APIs, but I agree it would be good to get some clarity there for how we do stuff. A lot of our current policies are around the REST APIs, but we haven't really described what happens for the gRPC ones.
So maybe we have to write down some policy depending on what Tim Hawken comes back to us with.
Yeah, I think the versioning story around the gRPC APIs has been way weaker just because it hasn't really come up.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the interesting thing about this policy thing is
to my
Slack
knowledge,
comment. The Slack comment started this. I'm sorry, Jordan, are you speaking because you're breaking up for me?
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, so I filed the issue. We discussed this before. We wanted to have this policy as part of SIG node, and I filed it specifically after comment on Slack, and the person commenting there was having trouble to compile in definitions we provide out of gRPC files, and we don't version those definitions. We just add fields, and they're backward compatible if you consume it through gRPC services, because you can add fields freely without changing the version theoretically. But if you consume compiled versions, then you may have troubles. So we need to clarify whether we support this scenario or people need to just upgrade to latest. Yeah, so that's basically the question. And once we have this declared, then it will be easy to define the policy.
Okay, Jordan says we version the repo, so you can get k/CRI API at 022, etc. So that leads to the next question. I remember Bobby Page having trouble with using the CRI API from CAdvisor, making CAdvisor depend on CRI API for some functionality. And so one of the options at that time we discussed was around, can we, right now CRI API is in staging. Should it be a standalone repository so that then both Kubernetes and C advisor can both pick it from there. Did that come back up, Sergey, in any SIG node discussions?
Yeah, we discussed it, and this was because of C advisor difficulties, right? We wanted C advisor to take dependency, and that's why we would have been enabled this diamond reference with containerd.
Right.
Yeah, this came up. I think Dawn has a warning us a lot about versioning stories there, because we will need to coordinate 3 repositories in terms of versions, and it may be a little bit tiresome. And I think she gave CSI as an example, and she said that CSI API had some difficulties versioning in versioning story.
Yeah, one difference between CSI and us is that we are not changing anything at all here, because CSI, there was a working group and they were trying to do something. For us, it's almost like, it is static at this point. And I don't think we've made any changes for a really long time. The only change that I remember somebody wanted to do was for kubelet to be able to query the CRI implementation on what the pause image that has been configured with it. So other than that, I don't know of any other changes.
We also did Windows privileged pods, like host process containers or whatever.
Okay, did that need CRI API changes?
Yeah, I think this Windows security structure was added. Like
that. And there are more Windows changes, I think, in the pipeline. So I agree it's slower moving than CSI, but I don't think it's completely done and baked. So we would need to make sure that it's reasonable. There's a reasonable workflow for adding things and pulling them in before we split it out.
Yeah, in this release, we plan checkpoint API, and in place vertical port update may require some changes. So at least 2 caps that currently in works may require CRI changes.
So will we freeze the V1 API at that point at 124 boundary? Or and if we need any more changes, we will go to a V2 API at that point?
That's part of the question that Sergey asked. Like,
right.
When we add things, do we have to bump the version, or can we add them, like make changes additively, and existing V1 providers just don't support those new things?
Right.
And that's what I'm not clear, like what the best practices are for gRPC. I think Proto in general supports like forward compatible, unknown fields don't break things. And so if there's a way to interrogate what the runtime supports, then I don't know that we have to bump to a V2, but I would definitely defer to the node folks and people like Tim on what makes sense.
Okay, so let us know, I guess, what you find out. Good luck. Okay. The next one, I think Jordan and we were talking about on Slack, was the Docker distribution dependency. So we tried going from the Docker/distribution to the other one, which is I think called distribution/distribution, which is a CNCF project, I guess, or somewhere else. I don't remember anymore. And that was a V3, I guess. So the problem was this specific thing that we were trying to pull in, the new one that moved out of Docker repository to a public repository, is pulling in many more dependencies that we don't really use. Jordan, do you want to add some more context here?
Sure. So I think the main change was actually that the new version specifies a Go mod file. which means that all the dependencies are exposed to Go, even ones in packages that we're not using. And so even though our use is very small, it was greatly complicating our dependency tree, like adding in additional 20-ish transitive dependencies. So it looks like we're only using a single package from this library, and we're only using it to parse image spec strings. That's the only thing we're using it for. So that seems like a really good candidate for just extracting the package we use and forking that one package, like the 1 or 2 functions that we use. Another good reason for that is that we actually don't want to pick up changes to that image parsing function. If the distribution dependency made additions to that or changes to that, that could be a breaking change for us because we expose this as API surface. So we actually don't want to pick up any changes there. So I think this is a good candidate for just pulling out the function or 2 that we use and then dropping the dependency entirely.
So I'm typing in the what we talked about in Slack in the doc. So the options are a third-party directory in KK, and the problem there is some of the code that uses this dependency is in staging. So the whatever is in staging can't depend on the third party. And we couldn't find any other good place which is already in staging where we could throw this stuff. So the second option that we talked about was k8s.io/utils. Looks like k8s.io.utils, we already picked up a third-party forked repository into iNotify, so we could do exactly the same. So let me add DIMS is on deck. DIMS will prototype. So I'll prototype this and I'll see if we need to preserve history and things like that and look at various options. One way to do this is just plonk the files as is. The second choice is to see if we can prune the Git history and limit it to just the files that modified, and then see if we can somehow mount that into the existing stuff in k8s.io utils. So that's what I'm going to try first. So we'll have some history, and we don't, if we need to go back in time, sort of thing. But our usage of this hasn't changed at all, and I think that should be easy to do. So that's an update from me on that. Any questions there? Going once, going twice? No. Jordan, what is the next one?
So this is continuing the to burn down the list of things that would block us from building Kubernetes in module mode. So I looked at this a while in the last release. We thought that Go was dropping GoPath support in 1.17, and so this seemed pretty urgent. That actually got deferred, partly because we reported to them that a bunch of our make files and code generators didn't work well in module mode, or were like 100 times slower. So we, Tim and I have been talking with the Go team, and they're definitely aware of like the impact. So they added one thing in Go 1.18, which is called Workspace Mode, which makes it easier to indicate you have a group of related modules and makes some of the Go tooling work better for doing things like querying across those modules. So Tim was playing with that, and it looked like that helped some of the things we were doing. And then the other aspect is our code generators and makefile stuff. We got some feedback from the Go team. They pointed us to the Golang tools packages library, which makes is sort of the next generation way to query stuff that works well across module mode or GoPath mode. But to use that, we have to sort of rework our generators to work more in a batch mode. Instead of iterating through like 100 or 200 packages and doing things one at a time, to really take advantage of the benefits there, we have to say, here are the 200 packages I want, please load them all, and then work on the results. So Tim has been digging on that. I don't know if he has a tracking issue. I had the, I can't type and talk at the same time. Module mode. I had the umbrella issue. I can't type and talk at the same time. I'm sorry.
That's okay. Type first.
Let me find the issue. So that was the issue that I had opened about building in module mode. I haven't updated that with some of the recent info. So I will see if I can get Tim to link to anything in progress he has, or sort of his plans. I know he was poking at it over the holidays. So I think there are, so the things that are good, it looks like Go 118 will help us. And it looks like there were a couple things that Tim found that might come in with Go 119 that would help us more, like honoring vendor mode in Workspace mode, stuff like that. So that's good. It's also good that the Go team is aware of the impact. And so I don't think that they will pull the rug out from under our feet and drop GoPath support until we've demonstrated we can successfully use module mode. So that's good. And it looks like Tim had sort of surveyed the code generators and at least knew what needed to be done. So I'll ask him if he could use help there. Maybe we can parallelize that some once he gets to a point where the work is pretty crisp to describe.
Yep, got it. Thank you. So there is a 1.8 beta 1 PR in KK to update to 1.8 beta 1 of the compiler. Now the question that comes there is, do we know if we can coordinate landing that PR and hoping that the Go team will release 1.8 by the time we need to ship in time for our code freeze and feature freeze and whatnot, right?
Yeah, I think it's fine to update to 118 beta 1. I think the timeline for 118 is like in the next few weeks. So
okay,
that's well ahead of 124 plans.
Okay. But as a policy, we should not ship a version of KK with a beta version of a compiler, right?
We should not ship a release.
Correct.
If we cut like a .beta 1 version, that seems fine.
Even RC is fine, but just not the final.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay. We need to codify that somewhere. I don't know where. I poked the release team and left a note saying exactly the same thing. We'll have to figure out somewhere to do this. Okay, what else? So I did go through the PRs and issues that we had in our buckets. They didn't seem anything that was going to make a lot of churn for us. Well, there is one thing that I'm waiting on, which is Containerd 1.6. When that gets released, we'll be able to clean up much more of dependencies from KK. So just waiting on that. There is a RC that is going to come out for Containerd 1.6. They were trying to shoot for this week, but I think it's going to slip to next week. So definitely, I don't know, probably a month after the RC1, unless they need an RC2 for some reason. So that's basically what I'm waiting on at this point.
What dependencies do we have on Containerd 1.6? Do you remember off the top of your head?
So when we pull in Containerd 1.6, we'll be able to get rid of more things from our dependencies. Because in Containerd 1.6, the API is in a separate Go module, and we will depend only on the API on the Containerd side. So first I'll need to update C advisor to Containerd 1.6, and then update KK to the version of the C advisor, so that transitively picks up the C advisor Containerd version as well.
I see. Thank you.
Yeah. So that's all we had for today. CC O'Marrell Banby, would you like to introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about yourself and anything that was interesting to you?
Okay, so first off, hi. It's my first time joining this SIG meeting. Very new contributor. Pretty much just jumping onto SIGs, trying to figure out which one I'm interested in. I'm interested in the code level of things. So this seemed to be a good place to be. My background, I'm a consultant DevOps engineer, actually. I work in a company in California, but I'm based on Toronto. So my time zone is EST. Pretty much been working with Kubernetes for 3 years, almost 4 years now, and been working from startups to Fortune 500 financial companies here. So pretty much any insurance company you can think of Canada, I've touched their production systems. And that's pretty much it. So nice to be here, and I hope I can contribute.
Absolutely. So just some general stuff about what we are doing here in this specific thing. So we are under SIG architecture, and a sub-project of SIG architecture called Code Organization. And basically what we end up doing is we look at, like you heard what we were talking about, right? Like this is one place where we look across the whole Kubernetes code base, and we don't care which SIG it falls under. We think about how do we update dependencies? How do we do a bunch of things that is across the whole code base? How do we sanity checks for code, linters, updating Golang versions. For example, 1.18 when it comes out, we'll be thinking about how do we add generics, for example, right? Like, so we need to, and then, or we probably tell people like, don't use generics until XYZ, right? Like, so one way or the other. So we talk about those kinds of challenges. So welcome abroad.
That sounds like a lot of fun.
Yeah. A lot of work is grunt work, which takes a really long time. So you don't get a quick hit. Like the C advisor Containerd stuff that we were talking about, there is a dependency chain that is going across multiple open source projects. So we end up touching other projects and tell them, hey, if you do this, it's easier for us, and like it'll be easier for you, or maybe you take on more work, so it's easier for us. So there is negotiations like that happening, and we push PRs to C advisor, Containerd, Run C, and other projects as well, depending on. And people will come to us saying, oh, Jinko, we are updating to the next version, what, will it work for you? And then we kick the tires and we get back to them with some feedback. So things like that. So some of these things take a really long time. So it's like lots of patience and lots of experimentations and work in progress. So little by little over a period of time, things get better. Okay.
It also seems like you guys really understand, like you have to understand everything that's going on in depth, so nothing breaks anything, which sounds like the perfect place that I want to be, except missing a lot of that knowledge.
We try, but we don't succeed all the time. So if you are in for the long haul, Welcome. If you need like short-term stuff, adios.
I'm here to stay.
Good. We won't mind, so don't worry. Any time you can carve out for us, that's good for us. We try to do most of the things on Slack. We haven't had a really good meeting like this for a long time now. So, and if not in a Zoom meeting, we end up providing some status updates on the Slack channel, and usually that works out. CC?
Yeah, hi, this is Cici, and I'm currently work at Google as a software engineer, and I started work in Kubernetes area 2020, and I started in cloud providers, SIG cloud provider, and helping like moving the external cloud providers out from Kiki private, and I won the 2020 Kubernetes Contributor Award. And after that, I moved to the SIG API machinery world. In last release, I worked in the cell validation. If you heard about it, it's just an alpha feature now, but we hope to expand it, of course. And also, I work in the SIG release team. For this release, I will be acting as the lead shadow. So say hi from the release team. And we are like just formatting the teams this week and fixing the timelines for the coming release. So if you have any opinion, please feel free to raise it in the PR before it merged. Otherwise, I guess it will be fixed. And thank you for raising the 118, like the beta issue there. We will, of course, keeping eyes on that. Yeah, that's it. Actually, this meeting sitting in my calendar for a long time, but it's somehow paused like in the middle because every time when I try to join, it's like seems not happening. And yeah, thank you for keeping it going. I will try to like join it.
Awesome.
Yeah, more often. Thank you.
Welcome again. Any other things that you wanted to talk about, Jordan or Sergey? Going
Not
once.
for me.
Going twice. Okay. See you all in 2 weeks. Bye.
See you. Thank you. Bye.